Is the plant that I'm going to give to my mentees. I have these two mentees called the twins. And this is tropical orange sour. I just topped the plant, which means it had a top here, and I topped it for the purpose of making lateral growth. So the plant, for the most part, shoots upward, but you don't really just want to have a singular cola. You want to have more yield and more opportunities for light to give you better buds. So you top it, and that encourages lateral growth, and then the plant is bushier. So right now I have this plant in my flowering tent. It's about 3.5 feet tall. But this is a clone that I'm giving to the twins, and I took another clone from it. So this is my show and tell tropical orange sour from Trichome Jungle Seed. I started smoking fairly late by a lot of people in the industry standards. So I was 23. I was already done with college, whatever. I was super anti-cannabis. And so when I had cannabis for the first time, what happened was I realized that my very rigid black and white thinking was really limiting, and that people, the government had lied. So I went from not smoking cannabis at all to smoking so much cannabis in the space of about 3 months that my husband, he was going to be my husband, but we had to grow cannabis. Like, it was required. It was a requirement. So that immediately changed my life, because I went from someone who didn't have like so many friends who would come over to having zero. And so I became a very isolationist type person, because in Florida, as still is the case, very, very illegal. And so the easiest way to get caught is to tell somebody. So if I'm growing cannabis for 10 years, I've told people in 10 years, less than 6 people have visited me in my apartment in Miami Beach. Less than 6. I can't have that, right? So that made me very isolationist. When I moved to California, and therefore, because it was California and I knew I was going there to grow a lot more cannabis, I became a much more open person, much more vulnerable person, because I started using social media to educate on the little that I knew about hash. I had been growing for more than 10 years, but I didn't know very much about hash, but I wanted a lot of people to be exposed to it. So I became more open. My face is on the internet, talking about cannabis. I had no concept of stigma anymore, because my mom was cool with it. My mom was cool with it. My dad seemed to be cool with it. So my thing was like, I don't have any issue. And so now, 10 years later, what cannabis has done for me has opened my eyes to a lot, because I've been able to travel like a lot and really see how cannabis is integrated into many people's lives, many different communities, many different perspectives. So cannabis has really broadened my horizons altogether. And at the end of the day, cannabis is medicine, so cannabis keeps me up and down every single day. Like, I have my neurodiversity, I navigate life because of cannabis, psychedelics also, but a lot because of cannabis. If it came down to it, I can't go anywhere unless I have access to cannabis. I'm gonna tell you, I was quite lucky. And you gotta make your own luck, but I was also quite lucky. So just real quickly, right before I moved to California, so we had a massage company where we were on site in people's homes, and this was South Beach, and like, it was a real luxury company, right? So I'm at this fancy guy's house. This guy's fancy house. He's fancy too, Mateo. And I'm like looking at his Lamborghini and his Ferrari and his gorgeous house. And I'm just, the massage therapists are doing their thing. And he comes over and he gives me a compliment. The therapists are great and whatever. I was like, yeah. I was like, you know what, dude? Can you give me a piece of advice? Like, just one piece of advice as I'm looking around your thing. Like, did I even ask him, or did he suggest it? whatever the case was. But I looked around, and I was like, oh, I'm taking advice by all means, right? And this is what he said. I like remember how the sun was coming down and how he was smoking his cigar or whatever. And this is what he said. He said, never walk into a crowded room. It was this is an analogy. Never walk into a crowded room. Best walk into an empty room and make yourself known there, right? So, but I went to California to do cannabis media and to grow more weed, right? And so I did, right off the top, I met a person, Frenchie, before I even moved there, when I was just visiting to get my license and stuff like that. And I tried hash for the first time, like traditional hash for the first time. When I met him a month later, I used those networking skills, met him a month later, I asked him to coffee. It is one of the simplest things, asking people not to pick their brain. Never say that. Never, ever, 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 for any reason, say that. But I asked him to coffee to just talk to him, right? Just to talk to him. And we had so many things in common that he offered for me to be able to, he asked me if I would write for Weed World magazine about hash. And I was just like, sure. Then he told me I needed to learn how to make hash. And I didn't really want to learn how to make hash, but I wanted the story, I wanted the opportunity, whatever. I learned how to make hash in September of 2014, and his style of making hash was not in favor. It was, even to this day, it is not the highest favor in the United States. However, I learned how to do it phenomenally well. And I'm one of the few that do. So I'm not in the crowded room where there are a lot of people fussing about who has the best rosin or whatever. And I'm not anti-rosin. I made rosin. But I make temple balls. And I make really, really nice temple balls. Such that you see the temple ball and you're like, that must be Duchess's. Because Frenchie is not around. I mean, for real, we all have our own style. So I say that embody your particular way and try to put on blinders about what other people are doing. That's a major thing. It's really, really easy to see oh my goodness, look at all of that success. That's one of the running tropes, which is find who's successful and follow them. Not follow them in terms of maybe their thought process, but don't just keep following them. You have to follow your own way, because what works for one person is not going to work for someone else. And if you keep jumping in somebody else's lane, you don't know that dance. You don't know how to do that dance, but you know how to do. My biggest thing that says to me that governments really understand the value of cannabis and care about their constituents, which I don't believe is the case, is really pushing for home grow initiatives. So if you have a legal cannabis, laws on the books, you have medical cannabis, but you're actually not allowing patients to grow, you don't care about patients. You don't really care about people, because all you're saying is that the commercial aspects of cannabis as a commodity is the only thing that matters, and not about people being able to heal themselves. Because if we're really honest, that I deal with some of my challenges with my neurodiversity, but I don't have chronic pain. I don't have I have issues, but I don't have some issues that cost a lot. So if you're dealing with Western medicine, it would cost a lot in pharmaceuticals. If you're dealing with alternative medicine, just the sheer amount of medicine that you need is very cost prohibitive. So the average person actually really cannot afford to medicate themselves the way that they should be able to medicate themselves. So being able to grow 3, 4, 5, 6 plants, that in itself is healthcare. Other than that, it's just cruelty. So where I'm seeing is that when activists and advocacy groups are successful in getting home grow on the books, then we're making progress. Otherwise, we're just making progress for the business, and not even all business people. Business people who are really capitalized from early have a lot of money so that they can afford to lose a lot of money, because regular business is ups and downs, and the cannabis industry is so volatile that it's really ups and downs, and it only needs a couple of harvests for the mom and pop that was able to secure licensure to no longer be a business. I think that what is happening is you're seeing more mainstream scientists and people who are interested in cannabis who decides to go into higher sciences, uh, I think there are going to be a lot more formulations, very much like pharmaceuticals for particular situations. So right now we have these things that are like sleep, happy, relaxed. Okay, those are pretty banal, but I think for someone like me who I need to stay up, I have narcolepsy, I need to be able to stay up, but dial down the anxiety in my head. And that's going to come down to manipulating terpene ratios, whether it's going to be in the cultivation side or if it comes down to formulating products, blends, or coming down to like if you're using distillate and things like that. That's not going to be my thing, but where you take different aspects of different plants and put them together to be able to affect people in a particular way. Because right now we do say like cannabis is medicine, and I do want people to grow their own so that they can dial in what works for them. But as it stands, really, there's definitely tens of thousands of strains you could find. There's an infinite number of strains, right? Being able to do a trial and error until you find exactly the medicines for you, it's kind of take long. You know what I'm saying? The most I can do is like 3 harvests in a year, so that kind of takes long. But if we're all crowdsourcing that, and then we're realizing when linalool is in a 2-to-1 ratio with terpinolene, blah, 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 this is generally going to affect hippocampus and memory in such and such a way, and maybe going to help with PTSD. Once we get into more targeted formulations for medical situations, it's a wrap, man. It's a wrap.